Well, he is a tireless voice exposing the fact that anthropogenic or man-made global warming is a manifest fraud. And we're getting an important update. He joins us every month or two, and we really appreciate his time. Lord Christopher-Monckton, 3rd Viscount of Monckton and Brenchley, of course, one of the chief advisors to Margaret Thatcher, a journalist, a scientist, inventor, and he is with us for the balance of the hour. We have routed for now the carbon taxers in the court of public opinion, but they're still implementing through states, counties, cities, regions, their carbon tax. So we're going to talk about how they've regrouped, how they're deceptively counter-striking, how they're changing their nomenclature with new lies for old. They've also got some organized counter-strikes on Monckton with straw men, manufactured attacks, so we're going to let him defend himself on that front. But out of the gates, you probably don't want to talk about this because you're a gentleman, but it is in Fox News, it is in the Associated Press, the Oregonian, that reportedly Al Gore, whose wife is now leaving him, was with this masseuse, and there are crazies who make stuff up, but we have no evidence of that, and it sounds like him. I mean, he just looks like a pervert. I'm sorry. I mean, if I saw him in a dark alley...
you wouldn't expect me to go there, because I try to confine myself to the science and economics of this question. What we can say is that Al Gore, whether he lied to his wife or not, I haven't the faintest idea, nor am I interested. What he has done is lie over and over again to the American people and the people of the world for great personal profit about the global warming scare.
But if it does come out that he did this...
listening to this,
sure.
Al, baby, if you're listening to this, I've now been trying to get you to debate with me on international television on global warming for nearly 4 years. Every broadcast I do, I make the same challenge: step up to the plate or go away into your collapsing armchair forever. Leave the field free for us real men. And so far, Al, baby, you haven't shown the courage of your convictions. And the only conviction you're eventually going to get is a criminal conviction for racketeering under the federal RICO statute.
Absolutely, because there's clear evidence of that. This could be completely made up, that he groped this woman, though I tend to believe it just at a gut level, regardless.
Well, I'm not going there. I mean, I've made that very plain to you. That's not what I do. What I do is the science and the economics, and the science and the economics say that Al Gore is wrong. He's running scared. Fewer and fewer people are listening to him. He now charges a fee. The Singapore government paid him a few months ago a fee of $300,000 to make one rambling, disappointing, diffuse speech about global warming. Nobody except the Singaporean government would now pay that kind of fee to him. But he is a busted flush as far as global warming is concerned. Nobody takes him seriously on that subject anymore. And indeed, nobody now takes the official bodies on this seriously, the official scientific bodies who have seen this as a way of making enormous money in rent-seeking subsidies from taxpayers. They're all discredited now. They've all passed from being scientific bodies to mere self-serving political pressure groups. They, too, are now discredited. We have just this week the United Nations Climate Panel, which is an enormous and growing bureaucracy, which has just announced that this time, because of the criticism that it's been terribly one-sided in its previous reports, it's going to widen the number of scientists it gets writing its next report, but it's not actually going to widen their opinions. It's still only going to choose those who believe the line which it wishes to peddle. They're still not going to ask the real scientists who've done the real work, showing what complete nonsense the official line actually is.
Now, Lord Monckton, I want to go back to Al Gore and criminal prosecutions, and then I want to look at how they're regrouping, how they're trying to counter-strike, and get your forecast, as the leading general against these eugenicists, of where you see them striking next. But going back to criminal prosecutions, where are we on Pachari? Where are we on Jones? You got cut off on the break. earlier when
Yes, indeed. Let's do Jones, first of all. He has been exonerated by the House of Commons. No surprises there, because our Parliament is the most true-believing of half-witted, credulous believers in this new religion of global warming. And they were not prepared to admit that they'd got it wrong by finding him wrong. So they of course, washed their hands of it and said he was a splendid fellow, really, which he isn't. He had destroyed data and procured the destruction of data from other scientists in a series of emails, none of which is denied, for the sake of avoiding getting anyone to check his figures and see just how much they were simply made up. So the fact that the House of Commons looked the other way is a very good indication of how the political establishment worldwide is not yet willing to admit what a colossal mistake it made. It's just like DDT all over again. However, there is, of course, the splendid Mr. Cuccinelli in Virginia, the Attorney General there, who is busy chasing after Professor Mann at the Penn State University to find out whether he, for the sake of getting grants, had in any way been improperly handling or using or processing official data. And that inquiry is still very much continuing. Pachauri was being investigated by the UK Charity Commission for having filed bogus accounts 3 years in the row in a charity in the UK of which he is the sole trustee, and it's the trustees whose job it is to file correct accounts. The Charity Commission, likewise part of the establishment, has now said, well, actually, we're not going to go after him. We're not even going to ask him to produce accounts for the year in which irregularities were proved by the complainant. We're going to make him produce accounts for a year that was 2 years later than the year in which the problem arose. So clearly, the most extraordinary lengths are being gone to by the public authorities worldwide to cover up the defalcations and the criminalities of the likes of Al Gore and Pachauri. And they're not actually going to go after any of these people because these people are part of the same establishment that ought to be going after them and bringing them to book.
Well, Lord Monckton, what do we do then with this quandary or this paradox of government stands to have the biggest increase in tax funding in human history?
Yes.
A new form of total feudalism and serfdom is openly being established. So how can the government that is the beneficiary robber class, the new kings and queens, you know, the new global lords of the people, how then can this group ever judge their own minions, their own operatives, if they're cutting off their own new global religion and funding mechanism?
Well, there you're asking one of the oldest questions in the history of the philosophy of government. And in Latin, it was quis custodiet ipsos custodes. Who will watch over those who are supposed to be watching over us? Who will be the policeman of the policeman? And that's one of the most difficult questions to answer. However, in a democracy, which you still have in America and we don't have here in Europe because we are now governed by unelected commissars, but you still have a Congress, and the only people who can make laws for you are your elected congressmen and senators under Article 1, Section 1 of your Constitution. 3 magic words will tell you what to do with these wretches. Vote them out.
Well, that brings me to my next issue. How they're regrouping worldwide. They seem to double down in England, double down in the United States, double down in Australia. When one crook gets thrown out, the establishment, especially in the parliamentary system, tends to put an even more extreme person in. But here in the U.S., every incumbent and everyone who's seen as an establishment candidate in all the off-year elections and primaries are being defeated by giant record margins. And the people are so angry that we've never had a political realignment where it was against the entire political system since 1776. And other political scientists agree with me. The polls show it. Usually one party's in favor, another is out of favor. Yeah. This is a total realignment against the entire system. And the system is coming in with Obama saying, well, I'll just restrict your free speech. I'll just put in Chinese-style net censorship. I'll put black boxes in your house. We'll make it illegal, as Cass Sunstein has said at the White House, to say, I don't believe in anthropogenic global warming. I mean, they are, instead of backing off, they're throwing the gauntlet down and saying, I am Tyrannus. I'm coming after you.
That's right. However, the Republicans are beginning to respond to this. They've begun to realize that the Tea Party movement is directed as much at them as it is at the Democrats, telling both parties to raise their game. The Democrats are resorting to insult and, as you say, to police state measures, taking away your Fifth Amendment, not your Fifth Amendment right, the First Amendment right to free speech, by saying that you won't in future be allowed to say that global warming isn't a problem. That kind of thing is intolerable in a free society. And there is absolutely no way Obama is going to get away with that, because the Republicans are beginning at last to wake up. I've spent a lot of time in Congress over the last year, talking to members of both houses, testifying in front of committees of Congress, and one of the things that's become quite apparent is that the Republicans, who were at first, a year ago, saying, well, we're very happy to argue this on the economics because it makes no sense to do anything about this, even if the problem's as big as the UN says it is. We can all see that, but we don't think we dare get into the science. Now, I said to them very bluntly, I said, look, if you don't get into the science, the other side will simply say, but the planet is at risk, and therefore whatever the economic cost, whatever the economic damage, we have to save the planet, and therefore you have to deal with the science. Otherwise, however sensible your economic argument, the other side will pay no attention.